League of Legends is about to change once again. This week has seen the launch of the Season 13 preseason patch. There's a whole bunch of changes to talk about, and there's now Pokemon in the game. Kind of. You'll see what I mean. Alright, just before we dive into today's video, I want to remind you guys we have a new merch line that came out in the summer. Some of the items on that new merch line were hoodies. I have them here. I'm enjoying wearing them now because it's getting a little bit colder. If that sounds ideal to you, then click on the link in the description box to go and check out the new merch. Thanks. I'm sure you'll love it. Worlds is over. Season 12 is dead. Long live Season 13. All eyes are now on January and the launch of the next season of League of Legends. Preseason began this week, which means there's already been a whole bunch of changes implemented for us to take a look at. The first thing Riot listed on the patch notes was the return of the Chemtech Dragon. Now, for those of you who have pushed this out of your memory, the Chemtech Dragon was released during preseason last year alongside the Hextech Dragon. People loved Hextech. They still do. I personally think that the Hextech gates are some of the coolest additions to the game in recent years. But Chemtech, people didn't like that. The Chemtech map transformation replaced large areas of brushes in the jungle with a fog that obscured those within it to everything except control wards.
Problem with the Chemtech Dragon is when the enemy team is ahead, you can't put defensive wards as the defending team. You can't put defensive wards and you can't fight in your own vision when they walk in because everyone is invisible. So if I push in mid-wave as the enemy team and I stand here in my invisibility, you can't do anything. You actually can't do shit.
It also kind of sucked for Rengar mains only having like half the brushes they normally do to jump out of. But what annoyed people even more than the weird map was the Chemtech Soul. Chemtech Soul revived players for a few seconds in a zombie form, which just felt like you had to kill the enemy twice. This clip from the time shows just how ridiculous that was, with one team having to kill their opponents 13 times thanks to Chemtech Soul and Guardian Angels. Then in January of this year, Riot U-turned and disabled the Chemtech Drake, Soul, and Terrain, but implied that it would return at some point once they got it right. Well, that point is now, and here are the changes. Killing the Chemtech Dragon gives 5% tenacity and 5% heal and shield power. The Chemtech Dragon deals 100% of its total AD plus 4% of the target's health with every attack. And this part is really interesting. When it's below 50% HP, it gains 33% damage resistance and deals 50% more damage. I kind of love this because it forces teams to not just sit there juggling dragon aggro. With this change, neither team is going to want to be sitting there tanking the Chemtech Dragon once its health drops below 50%. Teams are going to be forced to commit to securing the dragon or fighting for it a lot sooner than before. I think that could be really cool. Moving on to the map changes, they are different in a good way. Although to be fair, that's a pretty low bar. The idea now is that Chemtech affects the plants on the map in various ways. Honey Fruit will give a small shield to the player and not slow them down at all, could be clutch. Stalker's Bloom grants a speed boost to allies running towards the plant and reduces any wards revealed to 1 HP. Meanwhile, Blast Cones promise to blast twice as far as before. I'm not gonna lie, I love the look of all of those. The previous Chemtech map felt like it was taking something away from the game. This feels like what map augments are supposed to be, additions. And as a jungler, I'm kind of looking forward to these blast cones landing me practically in the middle of someone's lane. Should be fun. And speaking of jungling, there are some pretty big changes coming to the jungle with this preseason patch. I'm very excited because junglers are getting pets. Yeah. These jungle companions are going to replace traditional jungle items. Junglers will be able to choose between the Moss Stomper, Scorch Claw, or Gus Walker, which will all come in an egg at the start of the game. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait a second, isn't this just Pokemon? Like actual Pokemon? Well, Yeah, it is Pokemon. I think Riot are even leaning into it a little bit. The companions will grow and evolve throughout the game by getting stacks from monster kills and champion takedowns. Their attacks will deal 20 damage plus a percentage of the jungler's HP, AD, and AP. They'll also heal their owner for 70% of the damage they deal with each attack, and they'll increase their owner's mana regeneration while in the jungle. The companions are going to evolve twice in a game. The first time they evolve, they'll upgrade the jungler's smite. Smite will deal 900 damage to monsters and can be used on enemy champions to deal true damage to them and slow them by 20%. So that's basically like the old smite upgrade, except it combines chilling and challenging smite. The final evolution is where things are going to get interesting though. First off, smite damage will increase to 1,200 against monsters and deal 50% of its damage in an AoE to other nearby monsters. That is a significant increase from the 900 damage smite that we're all used to. There really should be no reason junglers are missing smites now. I'll probably still miss a few. But the final evolution will also grant buffs to the jungler based on their chosen companion. These can be shields, tenacity, damage, or movement speed depending on their choice. I think these are going to be really crucial to the new gameplay. When it comes to these buffs, there's a whole lot to unpack. We're not going to do that here, but here's the gist from what I can tell so far. Moss Stomper sounds great for tanks, Scorch Claw sounds like it's going to be the pet of choice for duelists, and Gust Walker could be great for anyone, but I feel like assassins might get a real kick out of it. There's also a protection buff, which everyone will get no matter what they choose, which will give junglers 30% reduced damage from monsters as long as 2 allies are nearby. By nearby, I don't mean like right on top of them, but just within the vicinity. 1,300 units to be precise. Now, I assume that this is to make it harder to solo dragons or barons, which I kind of get if that's what they're going for. I think it's pretty fun to do as a jungler in game, but when it comes to competitive play, when it comes to being a spectator, it gets boring as hell to watch people just solo those kind of objectives. I want to see teams scrap for it, so this could be cool. Something else that has already got a lot of people worked up in the preseason is jungle pathing. On junglers' first clears, they'll see recommendations for which path to take. These will be determined using data gathered from so-called high-skilled junglers across the globe. The paths will be based on win percentage and will be updated after each patch. Yeah, so a lot of people aren't happy with this because it feels like Riot are continuing to dumb the game down for newer players. The idea is that back in the day, junglers were rewarded for learning buff respawn timers or learning the best jungle path to take through trial and error, and now that's kind of gone. I hear the argument, I do think it's going to be a little bit distracting at first to have that on your mini-map, but I honestly think people are going to get pretty used to it, and also hopefully Riot will introduce a toggle on or off feature if it gets really frustrating for people. Before we leave the jungle, another thing to note is that the jungle is getting its own mini durability update. Basically, camps are going to be tankier, but also hit a little softer than before. They're also going to give laners even less gold and EXP than before. Junglers will also deal 20% more damage from non-true damage sources to monsters on their side of the jungle, but not to enemy camps. Now for me, this basically spells the end of counter jungling, which I think kind of sucks. I get that this is all a part of Riot making the game more beginner friendly, but I think it was a really cool, complex part of jungling and the game in general, and I think jungling will suffer without it. Riot have actually insisted in the patch notes that they're not trying to kill counter jungling, that they do want it in the game, but that right now they feel it's just a little bit too strong. We'll have to see. Finally, for the jungle is sustain. Riot have taken some of the healing power out of Smite and Gromp and put it into the new jungle companions. Now, Riot have said this should result in more champions having a healthy first clear, which should result in more champions being viable in the jungle, which could only be a good thing, in my opinion. There's also been a pretty big change to the vision system. Basically, ally wards will let you know when they're close to expiring, and enemy wards can be pinged or attacked within 10 seconds of seeing them to create a ward timer for your team. We're also getting new communication tools in addition to the ones we've had for a few years now. These extra pings will include push, all in, hold, and bait. The vision wheel is also getting vision cleared and need vision. They're also adding off-screen ping indicators, so you don't have to be looking at the exact perfect spot to see your allies ping. Personally, I like the sound of these changes. I remember when everyone complained about the original ping wheel, and now it's hard to imagine a game without it. But I do agree with the sentiment that at this point, it feels like Riot are trying to implement just about every form of communication tool except a proper voice chat. I just think they don't trust League players. sad. Which is weird because they gave that to Valorant right off the bat, and now they have all these fancy ways of detecting toxicity, so I don't know what's going on there. We're also getting an objective voting system, so your team can, in theory, decide to do an objective as a group without needing to be spammed 50 times by one player. I say in theory there because for me, this kind of feels a little bit like wishful thinking. I think it could be one of those features that works really well if your team is ahead. Everyone's being nice to each other, politely asking their teammates if they'd like to start an objective. Sounds great. But as soon as things turn sour for a team, and let's be honest, that happens 50% of the time, I don't think this feature is getting used at all. I don't think teammates that are fighting each other are going to get round the table for a democratic vote unless it's to forfeit and just move on. Maybe I'm being cynical here, but that's what I think will happen. We're also going to get a whole bunch of new items, as well as the return of some old favorites such as the Spear of Shojin and Rod of Ages. God, it feels like it's been years. I mean, it has. And of course, there's a whole bunch of champion tweaks as well. And that, in a rather large, messy nutshell, is the preseason patch. We did it. Obviously, it's out now, so some of you watching this will have already played a bit on it. Does it feel weird? Does it feel good? Let me know what you think so far. I'm probably going to try out some jungling today, and I can't wait to pick my very first starter Pokemon. I mean, companion. Jungle companion. Definitely no legal issues there.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, hit the sub button and ring the notification bell. For unique bite-sized videos you won't find anywhere else, hit us up on our Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.